You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Season 3, Episode 7, Bottomless Pot of Secrets. Written by Wendy Herman. Read by Wendy Herman. Trevor was not the father of my precious boys. My life was becoming a soap opera. I had shut down my emotions to avoid a complete and total blackout when my father told Ty and me that my crazy, soon-to-be ex-husband was sterile and had been his whole life. Talia's joke about the alien DNA was starting to sound less and less ridiculous. I told both men that I couldn't handle any more bad news. I was so exhausted, I just wanted a bed. When my dad informed us that the nearest hotel was back in the city, over an hour away, I felt my face start to tremble. I was losing control. He offered his guest room, and we had little choice but to accept. We followed him to a back room where an old built-in bookcase concealed a set of stairs going underground, but not the kind one would imagine. They were beautiful wooden stairs, and the light coming from the other end was inviting. We descended and found my father's real home. He had spent the past decade creating a subterranean paradise beneath the old print shop and dilapidated house. It was complete with home theater, fully stocked bar, and a cozy guest bedroom and bath, in addition to the master suite on the other end, which was simple but beautiful. It seemed there was no end to the secrets this man kept. As my dad walked us into the guest room, Ty excused himself to use the bathroom, and left us alone for the first time. There was an awkward moment, and Dad made to leave, but I stopped him. "Dad," he turned and looked at me questioningly. "I have to know." I was having trouble spitting it out. "What?" he asked, not irritated or curt, but almost fatherly. "Did you volunteer us?" I gestured toward the bathroom where Ty was hiding. "For the RVW project?" "No, honey. You volunteered yourselves, both of you. You knew what you were signing up for. After the implants were put in, we had that memory erased. It was necessary. Do you understand?" "I understand you could tell me anything and then just claim my memory had been erased." He winced at my words, and I was kind of glad. I wanted to hurt him after everything that had happened, but if I'd known exactly what I was doing back then, that changed everything. If Ty and I had willingly volunteered to be guinea pigs for the implants, then I would have no one to blame but myself. For everything. "Why did you let me, Dad?" This surprised him, and he sat on the bed next to me, a smirk on his face. "There was no talking you out of something you really wanted to do, Freya. You were an adult. I was 19. Hardly an adult." "Yes, well, you were 19 going on 40. You had always been very mature for your age." He leaned toward me and put a gentle hand on my shoulder. His eyes were sincere. "You were so right for the RVW program, Freya. You were perfect." "How can you say that? I was perfect for an assassin? How are you even qualified to be the judge of what I was or was not suited for? You hadn't been in my life for over 5 years. You didn't even know me." I was fighting the sobs. I didn't want to cry in front of him. He took a deep breath and swallowed hard before answering. Ty came out of the bathroom just then and paused in the doorway when he realized he had interrupted our conversation. Then he saw how upset I was, and the look on his face told me that he would take my father down if I wanted him to. I squinted at him and shook my head ever so slightly to let him know I was okay. My father glanced at him, but then returned his attention to me. "I don't want to overwhelm you right now, but just know that the technology was not perfect. There were some side effects, and some of your memories, or lack thereof, are not what you think. I did know you very well. Besides being your father, it was my job to know. I was responsible for making sure the chosen subjects were unique in their ability to adapt and overcome in any situation. You are an extraordinary woman, Freya, and I'm not just saying that because you're my daughter." He chuckled softly at his last comment, but he wasn't winning me over that easily. So how exactly were you qualified to decide if I would make a good killer? I had turned the corner from upset to pissed off. I'm a psychiatrist, one of the top in my field, or I was 30 years ago. Can't imagine the human mind has changed much, though. You're a shrink? Ty asked. You are a psychiatrist? How did I not know that? He shook his head. It was best that you didn't know what I was involved in. I told you I was an accountant once when you were around 12, and you didn't question it. An accountant? I didn't remember that either. Dad, why keep that a secret? My life was very complicated, Freya. I got involved with the government early on in my career, shortly after your mother and I were married, and let's just say the people I worked with and the project I was a part of, well, I thought your lives would be easier if you didn't know. He patted my leg and stood, smiling. Now, get some rest. We can talk more in the morning. All this confessing is exhausting. He arched his back and stretched his arms out in front of him. I think I'll turn in too. Oh, and don't try to go upstairs without me. Ty and I both looked at him, waiting for an explanation. I've got an alarm system, and you don't want to set it off. He pointed to the stairway door. Let's just say the cleanup is a bitch. At that, he nodded good night and left the room. Ty walked over and closed the bedroom door. For the first time in a long time, I cried. I cried until I was sure my body could no longer manufacture tears. And Ty was there. He held me in his arms and never let go. He didn't say a word while I let every betrayal, every deception, every fear flow out of me like a tidal wave. At some point, we laid down on the bed and fell asleep. When I opened my eyes the next morning, still wrapped in Ty's strong arms, I felt renewed. I counted my blessings. Ty, my boys, Talia, my mother and brother, thankfully a million miles away from all this. How and when I would tell them everything was a decision that would have to wait. And the biggest blessing of all, my unwavering sense of self. Despite everything, I knew who I was, and I wasn't about to let anyone tell me otherwise. I was Freya, goddess, warrior, mother, lover. My father was right. The quality that apparently had made me the perfect assassin would also keep me out of the loony bin as I pieced my life back together. I could handle anything life chose to hurl at me, and handle it I would. I got up slowly, trying not to wake up Ty, but pausing to gaze at his beautiful face for a second, then snuck into the bathroom to freshen up. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and took a hot shower. When I emerged, I felt like a new woman, ready to take on the day with Ty at my side. Ty was just stirring when I opened the bathroom door, and he smiled when he saw me wrapped in a towel. I stood in the doorway and just gazed at him. He sat up on the bed and ran his hands through his dark hair, yawning, which produced the dimple that had one job and one job only, to make me happy. I smiled so big, I'm sure the light that emanated from me was visible from space. Well, you were in a good mood this morning, my warrior goddess. My whole body suddenly felt warm as I watched him stand and begin undressing for a shower. I had never been the praying sort, but before I could comprehend it, I was thanking God for making this amazing man just for me. I decided then and there that I would thank the Maker for my blessings on a regular basis. In fact, I was going to start appreciating everything in my life that was good, starting with Ty. Thank you. He stopped unbuttoning his shirt and smiled that crooked smile that stopped my heart. For what? For saving me. His smile faded and he walked over to me, wrapping his arms around my shoulders. I couldn't look away from his stormy eyes. I saved you, he said. I responded by curling up one side of my mouth ever so slightly. He slowly shook his head back and forth but didn't break eye contact. For 20 years I've had half a heart. I always knew it was you who had the other half, but I never dreamed. He suddenly stopped, and I realized he was choking up. He looked away, but I caught his eyes. He was having trouble gaining his composure. I put my hand on the back of his head and brought his lips to mine. His hands came up to hold my face, and he kissed me passionately. My stomach started doing an Olympic gymnastics routine. You saved me, Freya. He gave me a soft kiss then, and my breathing became erratic. Tell me you love me, he whispered, so close that I could feel the vibrations from his words on my lips. I love you. He closed his eyes, drinking in the delicious words, although I was sure I would never be able to do them justice. I finished unbuttoning his shirt for him and let it fall to the floor, where my towel soon joined it. Ty got his shower about 20 minutes later. When we emerged from our bedroom, the door to the stairway was wide open, so we assumed my dad was already up. As we ascended, the smell of eggs and bacon wafted down to us, urging us upward. He had tidied up the kitchen enough to cook a decent breakfast, and he looked very different than he had the night before. He had showered, shaved, and was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt. My first thought was that he had decided it was time to come out of hiding. "Well, you look like a new man," I exclaimed. He smiled as he carefully slid some eggs onto a plate and handed it to me. "I'd like to go home, with you, if that's all right." I had been about to take my first bite, and it hovered in the air now, halfway to my mouth. I stared at him, disbelief filling my eyes. "For how long?" Ty asked, after noticing that the ability to speak had left me. "As long as you'll have me." Suddenly I came back to earth, setting my fork down on my plate instead of finishing the motion to my mouth. I was no longer hungry, but something had made me smile. I realized it was the fact that my father had addressed Ty as if he were my husband, my other half, capable of making decisions that affected not just the two of us, but my boys as well. It had solidified what I had already begun to sense. Ty and I were now a family. That realization spread through me, and I knew that whatever the day held, I would be able to take it in stride. My dad wants to live with me, us. After being absent from my life for 20 years? Bring it on. We ate breakfast and gathered our things to leave when I noticed something different about the living room. It was empty, except for the old couch and coffee table. "Dad," I called toward the stairs where he had gone down to pack a bag. "Where are all the newspapers?" I could hear him coming up the stairs. "Safe. I don't know when I'll be back here, so I put them where they won't be disturbed, and where I can get to them if I need to." I took a deep breath. All of this top-secret, covert stuff was still very new to me, and sometimes it scared me. Was I doing the right thing? I pushed the thought of my boy's safety out of my head, or tried to. I took another deep breath and reminded myself that I had only done what was necessary, and I would continue to do what I had to in order to find out the truth. That was the only way to ensure their safety. My father climbed into the back seat of Ty's car after depositing his single suitcase in the trunk with our bags. As Ty pulled away from the old house, I found myself staring after it, trying to comprehend that my father had been living there, just a few hours from my own home, for the past 10 years. I remembered an important question that he still hadn't answered, and decided that now was a good time. He was trapped in this vehicle with us for the next 2 hours, and as far as I was concerned, he was going to answer every question I threw at him during that time. "Dad, hold on, Freya," he cut me off. "Ty, stop here for a minute." "Is something wrong?" Ty asked, looking in the rearview mirror at our backseat passenger, as he slowed to a stop in the middle of the dirt road, about half a mile from the shack. "Just one more thing I need to do before we leave." I turned in my seat to see my dad pull a small black box out of his jeans pocket. There was a red button on top. No, it couldn't be. My mouth fell open as my father pushed the button. Behind him, outside the back window, a large explosion erupted from the house, launching flames 100 feet in the air.
You're listening to Big World Network.